Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Respected brothers, sisters, elders, and everybody listening, joining, watching. We're all going through this, so this is a new way that we engage with one another, right? It's all done via Zoom or YouTube or one of these apps. And usually at this time of the year, we're all meeting one another. These talks are taking place in masajid, in centers, and there's a lot of engagement. But subhanAllah, this Ramadan is a unique Ramadan in the sense that it really encapsulates the spirit of Ramadan. Right? This Ramadan that we will have reflects the entire spirit. So our previous Ramadan we'll be busy, we're going to work, running around. But this year it just seems like isolation and being indoors just reflects the entire, you could say, year one of the prophetic mission. When the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he received revelation, it was in that isolation, it was in that cave, and it was in that kind of solitude. And so this year will mirror to a large degree that kind of experience for many of us, and we'll be able to self-reflect, self-develop, and really just engage with ourselves, something we don't get to do. And that's the spirit and essence of Ramadan. Ramadan is about just exploring yourself more, in a sense, to understand your relationship with Allah, finding Allah within yourself and your actions, because that's what's missing most of our lives. That's the link that's missing. So it's a time where the less distractions that we have, the better, easier, and more conducive it is for us to connect with Allah. And so now we don't have to travel so much. We don't have to really go to so many different places. We can be indoors. We have much more time, more space, more privacy, and in that way we can definitely do more, especially in Ramadan, right? So before we talk about the fiqh of Ramadan, and when we say fiqh, there's this assumption that fiqh just refers to do's and don'ts, and that's actually inaccurate. Fiqh is much more than just the do's and don'ts. So fiqh tends to become a discussion of, yeah, you can do this, you can't do this, you should do this, you shouldn't do this. But really fiqh is deeper than that. Fiqh refers to the underlying meanings, underlying or underpinning principles behind everything that we do. So why is it that we fast? Why is it that we stop eating at the break of dawn, at time of Fajr? Why is it we stop there? Why is it that we must adhere to certain principles? And understanding those meanings, those principles, and then working according to those principles is what fiqh is all about. It's really engaging with our tradition at a deeper level. And that's what is somewhat missing in all our lives. I mean, if we talk about the Quran, we don't engage with the Quran the way we should engage with the Quran. Our engagement with the Quran is either just recitation, just fluid recitation, or it's a reading of translation. But nobody sits and dives into the Quran trying to explore, understand what it's being said. And this should be done by everybody, right? Everybody should understand, read the Quran. The Quran is a guide for me, for you, for everybody. So to just reflect upon the verses and the meanings is something we all need to do. And just a couple of days ago, I was just thinking that why is it that the Quran has so many stories, right? So many stories. And people think that, it becomes for some people, it becomes a storybook. But the beauty is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has captured multiple principles and fundamentals of this world and of life, right? Fundamentals to achieve a high level of prosperity in this world and the hereafter. And when I say a high level of prosperity, what I mean is economically, mentally, socially, physically, emotionally, in every single facet of life, we can reach the peak of excellence, but if we adhere to the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has selected these narratives of prophets. He has immortalized them, and He's given them until the end of time, forever. They'll be remembered in the Quran, and they've been secured, right, in this kind of, it's almost like it's something like we have the blockchain, right? So those who have an attachment with finance, they understand that the blockchain works, immutable, right? It's a distributed ledger. right? But it's as if there's a blockchain there where things have been stored permanently, that data has been captured, and now you can't, that can never change in the Quran. So why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has chosen these narratives of several prophets and made us read these over and over again? And the rulings are like, if we look in the Quran, the first 10 juz have rulings here and there, but yet there's many stories and narratives and narrations. But then from the 10th juz to like the 23rd, 24th juz, again there's a lot of narrative of the prophets. So these stories of the prophets, they have captured fundamental principles. And every prophet, their lives and their, you could say, their experiences captures fundamentals and universals. So one prophet, for example, Shu'aib alayhi salam, the way he was with his nation and what his nation did, it has an economic vibe to it, and it has an economic kind of lesson from it. The Yusuf alayhi salam, how that teaches us about governance, how it teaches about, there's so many things in there. Then we have Musa alayhi salam, even that, it's just amazing, this whole story. So these narratives are not just there for reading. These are narratives for really trying to derive and deduce principles that we can enact in our lives all the time. There's so many principles in there. There's so many principles, we just have to unearth them. So that's the engagement we should be having with the Quran, especially in Ramadan. We should be thinking that, why is Allah telling me this this narration? For example, we all read about Ibrahim alayhi salam, and when Allah says, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنْ, right? When in the first juz Allah talks about how He tested Ibrahim alayhi salam with great tests, right? With huge tests. فَأَتَمَّهُنْ, He completed them. Now, usually when you and I, we read the Quran, we'll say this means, okay, if a person is tested, قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا, if a person is tested, he passes those tests, he becomes an imam. That's a very simple, surface, cursory kind of meaning. But what is actually going on here? If you look deeper, Allah is teaching us about governance, right? Allah is teaching us about governance. If you want good governance, and we talk about corporate governance, and we talk about governors in charities and trustees and all these different public sector, private sector, whether it's corporates, everybody has a governance structure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us about governance from the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That any person who takes a leadership position or a position of governance, he must have gone through a fit and proper test. That's why even in any kind of investment platform, or if you want to be an independent financial advisor, you have to pass or abide by fit and proper tests. The FCA will regulate you, the Financial Conduct Authority, to pass these kind of tests, which ensures you're fit and proper. So this is being enacted, directly in the economy and the finance world. But Allah is teaching us the same thing in the Quran, that only that person can lead or be fit enough to lead if he has gone through challenges, he's gone through experiences, because then once he's an imam, he'll be leading thousands of people. And how can he relate to thousands of people if he has gone through experiences which qualify him to speak on a number of issues because he's experienced them, or he's experienced really difficult, challenging scenarios, then by which he can relate to people. And so just from that one verse, you can see there's a whole idea that develops there. And that idea, now we can enlarge the idea, and we can deduce the idea and develop a framework to apply to modern day. And that's why the Quran, brothers and sisters, is not just, we think the Quran is just about, getting us to the Akhirah. It's not. The Quran is much more than that. The Quran is not just a shortcut to the Akhirah. Rather, as I said to some of my students, that the Quran is not a way out of this minefield that we are walking in today. The world is like a minefield. The Quran is not just a navigation to get out of the minefield, rather it's a navigation on how to sweep the minefield and how to make this field more conducive for people to then easily walk to the hereafter. That is the Quran. The Quran isn't just about you and your shortcut to the Akhirah. The Quran is, and that's what it means, Hudan Linnas. When you open the Quran, Allah tells us this is guidance for mankind. What does that mean? It's guidance in its absolute totality in every single area. It really is. because this is the word of Allah. For Allah to select these words, for you and I to read, enact, act upon, deliver, and propagate, there must be a reason He's chosen this. And for this then to be the guidance for thousands of years, there must be a reason, without any prophet then coming thereafter, right? For this to be the rule book or the playbook that we have, for us to act and work, it must and has to be applicable to all of our lives every single day. It cannot be that the Quran can't relate to you and I. It cannot be. Then there's something wrong with us. It's not wrong with the Quran. The Quran speaks to us on a daily basis. Really, if you engage with the Quran, there's something for you in there. But it's just that we don't ponder enough. We just don't have the intellectual fortitude or understanding to dive deep and reflect. So reflection is missing. And so that really then, as a prelude or a preface to our discussion on Ramadan, is really that the Ramadan is the Shahr al-Quran. It is the month of the Quran. If we're not engaging with the Quran in Ramadan, whilst we're at home in isolation, then really it's not Ramadan. It's just, we're not maximizing at all. We're not really doing anything. And we say this all the time. These reminders are said every single time. But what makes it different this year is that we have less excuses. We have less excuses. We have more time, inshallah. Taraweeh, most of us will be performing at home. I don't think anybody will be going outside. Those who are able will be performing at home. So you'll have much more time to reflect, much more time to sit, much more time to do things with your family. And so Ramadan is really a month of the Quran. So as we now talk about Ramadan, so Ramadan is, if it's the month of the Quran, Quran has to be synonymous to the Ramadan, right? Quran and Ramadan is synonymous. You can't have a Ramadan without the Quran, and the Quran is part and parcel. It was revealed in Ramadan, right? There's so much attachment between the two. And in fact, when Allah talks about Ramadan, He talks about the Quran in there. So let us focus. I think the first lesson I just want to mention before we get into all the rulings and principles about Ramadan is, let us engage with the Quran. That's number one, without a doubt. Let us make it fruitful. Let us make it, a reflection. Let us think deep. What is the Quran saying to you and I? What lessons can we derive? Don't be afraid of trying to derive lessons. I'm not telling you to become a mujtahid and take out rulings from the Quran. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to you, see and just understand what Allah is saying, because this is your book, right? What happens is, sometimes we get fearful that, am I allowed to do this? Am I not allowed to do this? No, you're just trying to derive guidance from Allah's book, and that is what the Quran is there for, right? You're not deducing rules, and you're not going to be giving fatwas to anybody, but it's just you engaging with the word of Allah, and you yourself trying to intellect, because the Quran is the most intellectual discourse. Why? Allah is the owner, He's a creator of intellect and intelligence. Right? Allah is He's the one who shaped intelligence. There was no such thing as intelligence until when Allah created Adam alayhi salam. He instilled intelligence in Adam alayhi salam. Until then, Adam alayhi salam was just a mold, or just a figure. But when the soul went in and Allah gave him the intellect and intelligence, the aql, it's Allah who created the aql. And so if He's a creator of aql and intelligence, you can imagine then when he speaks, His speech will be at the peak of intelligence, right? It'll be, if you truly want to have an intellectual exploration, if you truly want to, nourish your brain and your mind, and to develop your mind. That's why, this is something I've seen from my own experience. Anybody who memorizes the book of Allah, their memory, their mind is always sharper. In fact, the scholars, they write, this is Imam Suyuti rahimahullah is mentioned in Jalalain, in other books it's also mentioned, that people who memorize the Quran, they don't suffer from frailness and the impact of old age. They don't suffer it usually, generally, right? They don't suffer. Allah keeps them pure and fresh. So that's the beauty of the Quran. So if the Quran has such an impact upon their external being, imagine the impact the Quran has upon a person's internal mind, because the Quran is an intellectual discourse. And so when you are engaging intellectually with the Quran, imagine how that is rewiring your cells in your brain and really creating some kind of phenomena within your brain. Right? So the Quran is an intellectual discourse. We have to, this ummah is an intellectual ummah. The Quran is, it's the beauty and the miracle of the Quran is in its intelligence. That is the beauty of the Quran, right? No matter how intelligent humans are becoming today, with all, for example, in finance, you have fintech, right? Financial technology, where finance is now being delivered through tech, and how it's creating a world of opportunities, whether it's AI, artificial intelligence, whether it's predictive analytics, whether it's blockchain, whether it's all these different fancy things. But the Quran can still engage on that level. It's always ahead. It's never behind. But the thing is, we are the ones who are behind everything. So really, we have to up our game and really develop a intelligence within ourselves. Learn, study, work hard. That's really the message with the Quran, and engage. So Ramadan is about the Quran, and Ramadan is the month that you and I should really engage with the Quran. And so having said that, so fasting, what is fasting? Fasting is one of the pillars of Islam. We know this, right? Fasting, we have 5 pillars. One of the pillars is fasting. Why is fasting, Saum, a pillar of Islam? Why has Allah created fasting as a pillar of Islam? And what are these pillars? Right? What are these pillars? When we say Islam has 5 pillars, what does that mean? Right? We should always ask why. What does this mean? So Allah has created 5 pillars. Are these 5 pillars a simple, do's and don'ts? No, it's not. When Allah said, when the Prophet has told us, Bunya al-Islam ala khams, Islam has been built on 5 pillars, it means Islam, the scholars mention, Islam is this general subservience. And these 5 pillars, they support subservience. So if we want a society, if we want a community which are subservient to Allah, then these 5 pillars are the foundations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a framework to establish subservience on this earth through these 5 pillars. These 5 pillars are universal. That's why Allah tells us in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. That Ramadan, the fasting was made incumbent upon those before you. Okay, it was made incumbent on those before you. So Ramadan is a universal worship and kind of a program, right? Fasting is a program. It's universal. It's applied to previous nations. It applies to us and continues to apply. Salah is no different. Salah was a universal program. Zakat was a universal program. Hajj was a universal program. The Shahada is something we're constantly doing and reviving. Shahada isn't just the utterance once in a lifetime. When we talk about the Shahada, we think it's just when a person becomes a Muslim, right? Those of us who are born a Muslim, how have we practiced upon the pillar of Shahada, right? Rather, Shahada means to bear testimony. And so Shahada, a person is, why is that the greatest action? Why is Shahada, the number 1 pillar? It's because we are doing it continuously, right? Think about it, right? Why is this pillar 1? Shahada is pillar 1 is because you and I are testifying continuously with our iman, with our heart, that we are believers. We are testifying that Allah exists, the being of Allah. So Shahada is number 1 because we're doing it consistently. Number 2 is Salah. Why is Salah number 2? Because it's, again, the frequency. It happens more than all the other 3. Then comes zakat, fasting, and there's a difference of opinion whether zakat comes first, fasting comes first, right? But then these are then more gradual, happens once a year or once in a lifetime. But Shahada is something we're engaging in with constantly. It's this utterance, it's this realization and conceptualization of Allah's existence, Allah's grandeur, and Allah's majesty. That's what Shahada is about. And then you have Salah, right? Salah is it's a program to develop humility and discipline. Zakah it's a societal pillar, which it's an economic pillar, societal pillar. It has so many facets there. Fasting, and when we talk about fasting, again, fasting is an amazing program. And I use the word program because you and I then can understand. When we use the word pillar, we can't really relate to this. But fasting is a program. Like you go on a program, if you want to go to a program, a 6-week program, and you get a certificate at the end. Fasting is no different. It's a program. Ramadan is a program which we enter, and there's a reason. Everything needs detox. Everything needs servicing. The car that you drive needs an MOT. It needs a service, right? Your computers, your phones, they need updates. They need upgrades. Your laptops need, scans for virus every now and then. You get these, notifications of, a scan, and you need to upgrade the software. There's updates always coming. So everything requires this kind of cleanup, this kind of service, this kind of process. But what about us as humans? Where in our lives is this upgrade, or this kind of servicing of our own lives and detoxing of ourselves? And that's exactly what Ramadan is all about. Ramadan is a program where we get to detox ourselves and really service ourselves, because life is challenging, right? Life is difficult. Life is not easy. You'll have ups, you'll have downs, you'll have happy days, you'll have sad days, you'll have days where your wealth is you're affluent, other times you're poor, sickness and health, happiness and gloom, loss of loved ones. You'll have challenging times. You'll have challenges in everything. Life is difficult without a doubt. Life is a challenge. That's why I called it a minefield. That's what it is. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a system, a complete system. It's an ecosystem where we can, if we adhere to this program that Allah has given to us, you and I and every single person will be able to navigate this minefield that we're in, remove the mines if we do it properly, make the land smooth, and easily traverse this field and get to where we need to go to. But at the same time, create a more plausible, more warm and more comforting environment to get there. That's what the Quran does. The Quran creates for us, if we adapt the principles of the Quran, we'll create a life which is more convenient, more comfortable for us, a life of content. So it's these ups and downs that we go through in life that Ramadan comes. Because really we should be doing this on a daily basis or on a monthly basis, where we reflect. And that's why we get those fasts. Have we ever wondered, why did the Messenger of Allah fast on a Monday and Thursday? Or why is the fasting 3 days a month a prophetic practice? It was this program. This program was being done because the effects of Ramadan is an annual program. But then as a top-up, you have these monthly programs just to kind of boost it up and keep it going. And then comes the long program, the 4 or 5 week program, where you go through this training as a community, as a collective, to make the program easy. Because if you do any program as a collective, as a community, that program becomes easy, right? Relatively easier than any other program. Whereas the other programs are just like individual programs that you do yourself. So this is what Ramadan is. It's a program. It's a collective program. It's a communal kind of action which we do together. So Islam has so much about community, right? There's so much. Every pillar has a communal sense to it. There's so many actions which have the feel of community, right? Salah, it's a communal thing. It brings the people together, right? SubhanAllah, in Islam, we don't need to. Allah saves us from going to, people have to socialize, going to pubs and youth centers and all these different places. But Allah has created a mechanism because humans need that. Humans, they need to socialize. We are social beings. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, you still need to socialize. You still have this need to be with people. And we're all feeling, that's why in the news, if you're reading the news right now, people are complaining they can't self-isolate or they can't stay indoors. And the social distancing, it's difficult for some people because it's our nature to interact and be with people. That's who we are. So Allah has created this framework of Islam. And within there we have the Salah, which is a social, there's no social distancing in Islam, in that sense. Allah, all our pillars bring us together. Salah brings us together. Zakah is literally a communal pillar. It won't be valid if there's no community there, because it's from the payer to the recipient. So they need more than one person. Hajj requires a community. You do Hajj together. And in the books of fiqh, they mention how you have this leader, this imam who takes the people on Hajj. And then fasting is no different. The fasting, you do your suhoor together, you do your iftar together. There's encouragement to feed other people at the time of iftar, and then you stand together in tarawih and you do qiyamul layl. So all these are like communal actions. So Islam has given us programs and these programs are communal in nature, so that there's maximum benefit, there's economies of scale, there's efficiency, and people then can work together to get to their destination. That is the what Islam is all about. Literally, that's it. It's not so technical. It's just do these programs, and that's why there was one companion. He came to the Messenger of Allah and he said, I will perform my salah, I will do the Hajj, I'll give zakah, and I'll fast in Ramadan. I won't do any more. I won't do any less. Messenger of Allah said, fine, you'll go to Jannah. Whether you increase, you do. He said, fine. Yes, scholars mentioned that the witr wasn't mentioned in there and other things, but that's a separate discussion. But the Messenger of Allah said to him, that's fine. That will get you to your destination. That'll be enough for him for Jannah. Because it's this program. This program is so holistic. This program is a route for all success. And this program is not just a spiritual discipline. This program is an economic discipline. It's a social discipline. It's a mental discipline. This program impacts all different angles of life. Right? So if we unpack Islam and develop these pillars properly and establish these pillars and understand the Quran, extract the principles within the Quran and apply the Quran, which embodies these 5 pillars and captures these 5 pillars, has guidance for every facet of life. And this Ramadan is this program which we'll be entering, and treat it as such. It's good to treat it like that. Have this understanding that this is a program. I'm here to better myself. I need this. It's not about, oh, here it comes. Oh, I need this. Allah has given because I need it as a human being. It's not just for spirituality. Yes, 100% is going to help you in spirituality, but you as a person in this world. Just you as a person in this world to get a more healthy mind, your soul, your mind, your heart, your emotions, all of that will be impacted. But first and foremost, through the spirituality. The spirituality will feed into all these areas of your life, and the strength will be drawn from the spiritual practices. So you will benefit yourself mentally. You'll benefit yourself, economically as well, because this is a month of charity. You'll benefit yourself emotionally, in every single way. Your society benefits. So Ramadan is this program that we're going to be doing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this program to everybody. All nations came and practiced upon this program. They had different ways they did it, but Allah made it an obligation. Because why? Our life in this world is there to really, as followers of the Messenger of Allah and as believers in all the prophets, they came to enhance life in this world and to get people to the Akhirah. That was their role. All the teachings of the Anbiya weren't just there to get people to the Akhirah, but the principles to get us to the Akhirah bring benefit for us in the dunya. Understand this principle, that we have 2 types of worship in Islam, or 2 types of actions, you could say. We have the ibadat and the muamalat, right? Ibadat are worships. They worship, right? Primarily, the benefit of that worship is in the Akhirah, meaning you'll be directly rewarded in the Akhirah. But there's the secondary benefits in this world. Every worship, like how we just mentioned and discussed, has benefit for us in this world. And the other side is mu'amalat. So yes, primarily in the Akhirah, secondarily in this world. Mu'amalat is your transactions, your financial transactions, your dealings with people, your marriage, your nikah, your social dealings. All this is mu'amalat. The primary benefit of that is in this world. The secondary benefits are in the hereafter. So if you practice according to the Sharia in your finance, in your wedding, your marriages, your social dealings, the primary benefit for us is in this world. These principles which Allah has taught us in the Quran, therefore they are for us to have a smooth life in this world. So we're not being told to stay away from interest and riba so that we can get reward in the hereafter. 100% the reward is going to be there. But Allah is saying, if you want to have a world which is at ease, there's justice in the world, there's stability in the world, economic stability, there's growth, right? Economic growth. That's why you stay away from riba, right? Because it's going to have it will 100% it'll have an economic impact upon this world in a positive way. And then, as a result, you will most definitely also be rewarded in the Akhirah for abiding by the laws of Allah. But these principles are for us to benefit in this world. So that's why Islam is complete in that sense. Allah's guidance is guidance for us in this world. It's not just about you and I getting to the hereafter and having Jannah in the hereafter, but rather developing something in this world which is for the greater good of mankind. And that's what Islam is all about. Islam is this program which is a program which for everyone, regardless of your background, regardless of the language you speak, regardless of where you're from. It's applicable, it's relative, it's for every single person wherever they may be in the world, whenever they come. And so Ramadan, brothers and sisters, is this program that we have, and it comes once a year. Okay, so who has to then fast in this Ramadan? Who has to go through this program? Right? Obviously, you have to be Muslim. Right? That's one of the first conditions. Right? Who fasts? A person who's a Muslim, because these things are not obliged upon those who don't believe. Right? So you have to be Muslim. You have to have sanity. A person who lacks mental capacity isn't obliged to fast. Likewise, you have to be an adult. A child is not obliged to fast because a program is like it's 13 plus or 10 plus, right? And this is how you relate to it, because it's difficult, and that's also one of the Allah's kind of Allah's wisdom, that if a child at the age of 5 was to fast, a person grows most of that time between from the age of 1 to 12, 13. That's growth period, right? A physical growth. They have different needs. A child has different needs. So Allah has removed the obligation from a child, because at that time their body needs certain different things. They need to be more nourished in a different way. Fasting is not as conducive, and that's what this makes you realize. The fact that fasting is not an obligation upon those who lack mental capacity and those who are not an adult and those who are not Muslim. It shows you fasting is a program with a specific purpose. Because if fasting was just an action to stay hungry, if that's all it was, then of course a child would have to fast. Of course a person who lacks mental capacity would have to fast. But really it's not that. It's something much more than that. It's actually it has a purpose, it has a course. We're doing a course when we're fasting in those 30 days. And it's the people who are adult, who have what they call kamal al-aql. The intelligence has it's at its peak. They're mature, they're sane, they have sanity. These people can understand and engage why they're doing these things, and they can benefit. So Ramadan, this just shows you in and of itself that fasting is more than just not eating. And that's the fiqh is simple as that. Just don't eat, right? Don't eat for those hours, and just don't have a intimate relation with your spouse. Besides that, that's the fiqh. But it's really for us to really engage at a deeper level, to understand it more deeper. Right? So this shows you that Ramadan is more than not eating. So these are the people who have to fast. Who's exempted from fasting? Of course, a person who's ill. Such a person who, if he fasts, he genuinely believes that he'll get more ill. His illness will intensify as a result of fasting. Such a person is excused, right? Or a person, he believes or he's told by a professional that if you fast, then this will lead to another illness, right? He's already ill or he's suffering from an illness, but this would be an onset to another illness. Then that person is also excused from fasting. Or a person who's ill, going through some kind of difficulty in COVID-19, a person who's unfortunately has been infected with COVID-19, and the person can't fast as a result, and he believes that if I do fast, my illness will be prolonged. That person doesn't have to fast then. Okay, so these people are excused from fasting. Fasting is not obligatory for them at that moment. Yes, they will have to do qadha. You have to make up at a later stage, but at that particular moment in time, you don't have to fast because of your illness. Likewise, a lady, a sister who is pregnant and she finds it difficult to fast, and she fears harm for herself and for the child, then she can also omit fasting. A woman who's breastfeeding, for her as well, if she can't cope, she finds it difficult, then she can also omit fasting, and she can make up the fast at a later stage. These people are excused from fasting. There is no sin. There is no sin. Allah has created excuses, and these again. See, when we talk about fiqh and we talk about these rulings, try to piece all the pieces together. It's like, you play dot to dot, right? As a child, you play dot to dot. Some even as an adult play dot to dot, right? Because it's just how enjoyable that game is. Or you put a jigsaw puzzle together. When you just have one piece, you don't understand the picture, right? You see things in a binary way. But when you piece it all together, it begins to make sense, right? You see holistically what's being said. And so, and sometimes, with the jigsaw, you only have a couple of words there, you get completely the wrong meaning. But when you put it all together, the message is completely different. Or even with a dot to dot, you'll have draw a few lines and you think the shape is something. But when you connect all the dots, it's a completely different picture. Same thing with fiqh. When we piece all these rulings together, we now begin to understand why Allah has given us Ramadan and why fasting is a program and what's its objective. Right? It's not there just for us to stay hungry and starve. It has objectives in there. That's why we mentioned the principles that a child doesn't have to fast, a person who lacks mental capacity doesn't have to fast. A woman who's pregnant and if she finds it difficult, a person who's ill, a woman who's breastfeeding, they don't have to fast because that program is just not conducive for them in those states. So when the program is conducive, I mean, it does have benefits, that's when you do the program. But when it's not conducive, it doesn't have its benefits that it's there for, then you are encouraged not to fast, right? In certain scenarios, you shouldn't fast when you know it's going to create some problems for you. So this is the beauty of piecing and understanding the rules of Sharia together and understanding holistically, as opposed to in silos. Likewise, a woman who's menstruating, obviously she will not fast. When it comes to the day, so she was while she was fasting and her cycle began, then she'll break that fast from that moment, and she will do qadha of this fast. Likewise, during the days, the next few days, she can eat in those days, right? Discreetly, she should eat discreetly. It's permitted to eat during the daytime for her because she's not fasting. And when she completes her menstruation, she will also do qadha of that fast. But then the moment she completes, then she should refrain from eating as best as possible because now the menstruation cycle has ended. So that's another type of person who is excused. Likewise, a traveler, a person who's traveling. And when we talk about travel, it's interesting because people find this difficult to relate to. What the scholars mention is a person who's traveling at the time of suhoor, right? So before the fast starts, that person is granted leave from fasting because you're a traveler from that time. That means from the moment the fast begins, you are a traveler. You don't have to fast. But if a person starts traveling, for example, nobody's going to travel anyway this Ramadan, right? I don't think anybody can go anywhere, even if they wanted to. So there's no traveling, right? So there's no excuses. But just say if a person, just say the restrictions ease and the lockdown's removed, then and the person wants to travel, and he travels in the daytime at 3 o'clock, he needs to fly to overseas somewhere. But then at 3 o'clock he's flying. What does he do? In that scenario, you'll fast in the day. Yeah, because of travel, if you begin to feel weak, tired, you can't bear it, it's difficult for you, then you can break your fast as a result of that weakness, dehydration that you feel at that moment in time. But you should still endeavor and try your best to fast. It's not a valid reason that you're going to leave at 3 o'clock. So that's why I'm just going to miss this fast altogether. No, you should try your best to fast. And then if something happens to you during the day, where you start feeling weak, dehydrated because of the activity, the stress, then that's a different issue. You can break your fast as a result of illness. But so that's when it comes to, and then the final kind of, I guess the final reason where people are exempted is old age. Right? If a person is so old, their body cannot bear the consequences of fasting, right? Then they are excused from fasting, and all they do is give fidya. When any person that is who's terminally ill or terminally cannot fast due to some kind of illness that they're going through, they give fidya, they pay. And fidya is your sadaqatul fitr amount. Whatever sadaqatul fitr you pay annually after Ramadan, you give that per fast that you miss, and you do that annually. So any person who can't fast as a result, should do that. These people who I spoke about were the old, the traveler, person who's breastfeeding, a lady who's breastfeeding, a person who's sick. These people, they can't give fidya. They have to make up the fast at a later stage. They can't give fidya. Fidya is just for those people who have reached a stage where they cannot fast anymore. So fidya becomes their default. But for other people, the default is fasting. And subhanAllah, so we understand that when we piece all this together, a picture is drawn that fasting is for a very specific purpose, for very specific people, because it's these people who can have an impact on themselves and others. They're active, they're healthy, and the program of fasting, and that's why, I mean, it goes to show that fasting is much more than just spiritual empowerment. Because if it was spiritual empowerment, right, why is it that a person who's old, I would argue that he needs that spiritual dose more than anybody else because he's on his deathbed, right? A person who's so old, they need fasting more than anybody else simply because he's generally, right, from the way we understand life, a person, that's when life ends. He's closer to meet Allah than other people. So for him, fasting would make more sense. So why is the Sharia then telling us this person is excused from fasting, right? Why is that the case? And these are the kind of questions we should be asking, which makes us intellectually think that why has Allah given us this pillar or this program? It's because the old person, for him, he won't be conducive. The fasting will not be conducive, will not be impactful for him at that stage of his life. It's lost the kind of program has lost its meaning for that person. It doesn't have the consequences or the impact or the nourishment that a fast develops in a person, that fortitude it builds and the strength a person gains. So fasting does not do that for a person who's old. Whereas younger people, healthier people, those in the youth, for them it builds that. And not only, so it's not only to be learned, it's not only about spirituality, rather it's multidimensional. Fasting is multidimensional. It's not spiritual. If it was only a spiritual goal, then the old person would have to fast, right? The old person should be fasting. But really it's because, yes, spirituality is at its peak. Without doubt, Allah tells us, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. The reason Allah tells us in the Quran is taqwa. But again, the thing is, the way we understand these terms is becomes so binary that we can't, we fail to relate it more than just a binary, this false dichotomy that many of us are plagued with, unfortunately, which is dunya akhirah. And it's a false dichotomy. A lot, Islam actions are for both completely. There should be no dichotomy in that sense. This is a very binary way of understanding, very simplified way of understanding things. And this is for the dunya and this is for the akhirah. Because the problem with that is then we go towards this issue where what happened with at the time of the Renaissance and in history, where you had a secular life for the markets and the church was for your personal life. This separation of the spirit and the soul and worship from everyday life. So life becomes something else and worship becomes an act of solitude. It's a personal kind of thing. Whereas Islam is not saying that. These dichotomies are not useful at all. Islam is there for everyone in every area, in every facet, whether it's in governance, whether in finance, whether it's societal, whether it's psychological, health, all these areas. Islam has guidance, and Islam, these programs that we practice and these actions that we do are there to develop these things. So our salah is there to help us in all these areas of life. Our fasting is there to help us in all these areas of our life. It is not just for us to gain the akhirah and the pleasure of Allah. Of course, that's why we do it at number one, because Allah is telling us. And we also do practice this because we want the world to also go to Allah. We want the world to believe in Allah, because we believe that if people practice on the Quran and people practice according to Islam, then that will make the world more conducive. It'll make the world more, it'll facilitate the world to be more aligned with the pleasure of Allah. That's why we're doing it. And whoever aligns himself with the pleasure of Allah, he'll have prosperity in this world and prosperity in the hereafter. What does prosperity in this world mean? It doesn't just mean, a life, a person be severely, at test, and he'll be, poor and impoverished. No, a person can, Allah can grant him affluence. A person can be healthy, fit, happy, content. But more importantly, the person will be doing things in the best way, and that's what Islam teaches us. If you want to live life in the best way, financially, economically, socially, mentally, psychologically, it's the Islamic way, whatever the guidance of Allah is. And even this dichotomy of Islamic and un-Islamic, right? There's a lot of that gets conflated as well. We become very binary, right? We're very binary. There's many things which many of us say, oh yeah, that's not Islamic, but we've not thought about what is Islam in the first place, right? When we say something is Islamic, what does that even mean? Okay, so these are just thoughts that I thought I'd share with you before we end off. So those are the key principles of fasting, okay, that we talked about. That who fasts, who can't fast, and then when it comes to when should you start your fast, we all know this. The fast starts at the time of suhoor, okay, and whenever your suhoor time is, every city has their own kind of time or moment of fasting. So you follow your local scholars, your local timetables, and fast accordingly. But that's when the fast starts. It's recommended to do suhoor, and it's thereafter. What breaks your fast? What would nullify your fast? If you eat anything, right? If you swallow anything through your throat, or anything goes up your nose, you snort up something up your nose. You take something up your nose. You inhale, breathe, whatever it may be. Even smoke. If a person smokes, he shouldn't be smoking because it's disliked makruh. To many, it's makruh tahrimi. That's almost like haram. So a person should not be smoking. It's definitely unhealthy. It damages not only you, damages everybody around you. So without a doubt, I don't understand why anybody could argue that it's anything but makruh, tahrimi, almost close to haram. And the stench is really, so one of those people, when you go to the masjid and you're standing next to a person who has just had a cigarette and smoked and walked into the masjid, the way it impacts you in your salah, it just spoils the entire kind of the whole experience has just become spoiled. That's why fasting smoking we should avoid altogether. So you should not swallow, you should not take anything through the nose, because these are invalidating entry points. Likewise, any medicine which goes through the anus up into your body, that will also invalidate your fast. So these are the main areas. Besides that, if you put something into your ear, it won't break your fast. And if you put eye drops, that's not going to break your fast. Something going in your eye, it's not going to break your fast. For a woman who has a smear test of these things, anything going from the front, it doesn't break your fast. Likewise for a male, if something was to go through the front, it's not going to break your fast. If a person is in hospital or you're having injections, that's not going to break your fast. If you're being have a drip you're being fed through the drip, that doesn't break your fast either. So these things don't break your fast. It's only that which goes into your mouth, into your nose, or from the back passage up. And likewise, if you have relations with your spouse, then that will also break your fast, and that's obviously prohibited whilst fasting. It's not permitted for a person to do that. If a person wants to have those kind of relations, then the fast will be broken and will be kafara. Likewise, if a person eats, for example, you're so hungry, it's like 4 o'clock, and the cooking's being done. The spouse is cooking, and you can smell the food. You feel really hungry, and you think, oh no, I can't wait. I just want to have just try something. You go there, nobody's watching you. You eat. You put something down. Whilst there's no excuses, and that has broken your fast. Not only do you have to do qada, you have to do kafara. Right, kafara. That means what that kafara means is where you have to keep 60 fasts. Right, so that's like the major penalty, that you have to fast for 60 days consecutively. So when a person does something like this, then you have to. So even if a person has relations with his spouse, a person has to fast for 60 days consecutively as atonement of this action that he's done. And likewise, if the person has had food, then Likewise, a person has to fast for 60 days. That's when they're doing it, when they eat and have relations willingly, joyfully. However, when a person eats by mistake, right? He eats by mistake, whereby he was completely forgetful that he was fasting. Completely forgetful that he was fasting, and he ate something. He had no recollection of him fasting. That will not break the fast. However, if he knew he's fasting and he's doing something, and water has dropped, and the drop went, or a bit of water went in his mouth and he swallowed it by mistake, that will break the fast. But in that scenario, a person will only have to do qada. He'll only have to make it up. He will not have to do the kafara. So these are like the key points really of fasting. So we talked about who fasts. We talked about the essence of Ramadan, which is a month of the Quran, which is really the spirit of Ramadan. Then we spoke about how who is excused from fasting. We spoke about how the fast starts and what breaks the fast. We spoke about the kafara, what you should avoid whilst fasting. So these are all elements of the program that we need to abide by, because these develop the desired traits of the program. So by practicing upon these things, the desired characteristics that should emerge by enrolling onto this program, they will be developed within one's life. And inshallah, that's why the beautiful ways to finish off with, I just want to mention that the hadith on fasting are amazing, because just a couple of hadiths that come to mind. In every single or majority of the hadith, on fasting and the rewards of fasting, they have a relationship with Allah directly. Whereas other actions, they have a price tag next to it. So for example, you say once subhanallah, you get a tree in Jannah. When you say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, tamla'ul mizan, like the heavens and the earth are filled up. Tamla'u ma bayna as-samawati wal ard. The hadith mention for sadaqah, for fast, for dhikr, for tasbih, the hadith mention tangible reward. Okay, there's like a price tag next to these actions. For salah, it's there. For zakah, it's there. For charity, it's there. Hajj, there's so many rewards mentioned. So all these things are mentioned in a tangible way. But when it comes to fasting, you don't find a tangible reward. In fact, all the hadith on fasting, they refer to or are connected with Allah Himself. Right? So for example, the hadith of Muslim, which mentions that Allah says, فَإِنَّهُ لِي وَأَنَّ أَجْزِي بِهِ, that, and he mentions that, the hadith mentions that every action of the son of Adam is multiplied. A single good deed is multiplied from 10 to 700 times. However, Allah says, except for fasting, إِلَّا الصَّوْمِ, except for fasting, because that is exclusively for me, وَأَنَّ أَجْزِي بِهِ, and I will reward him for that. Imagine that, right? This is just one hadith where Allah tells us that every action has a reward except fasting. Fasting has, it's that is reward is with Allah. Another hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Messenger of Allah, he mentions that لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ فَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ فِطْرِهِ وَفَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِ. A fasting person enjoys two joys. فَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ فِطْرِهِ, when he breaks his fast, وَفَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِ, and happiness when he meets his Lord. See again the connection with Allah Himself. And then the third hadith which connects fasting directly with Allah is, we've all heard this hadith in Bukhari, where Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates the Messenger of Allah, he said that the odor and the smell of a fasting person from his mouth, that odor from his mouth, that smell of his mouth, is more beloved to Allah than the scent of musk. Now see, all these hadith have Allah in it explicitly. Allah is in them explicitly. Why is that the case? Why is fasting then so, intimately linked to Allah? There's so much, proximity with Allah through this action of fasting. It's because fasting is a very proximate action. It's a very hidden action. It's a very exclusive action. It's something which is so uh, so close to myself. It's me within myself, right? And that, who knows that better than Allah? Nobody knows that. Only Allah. So it's because you're engaging with Allah at such a intimate level. You're engaging with Allah at such a deeper level, which cannot be uh, understood by anybody. And because you're engaging with Allah at that depth and that level, that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is engaging with you, with Himself at that level. And that's why the reward of fasting is that Allah is saying, look, I will personally give you the reward. Forget every other reward. I will give it to you. Number two, when you meet me, that'll be your greatest day of joy. And number three, the scent or the smell that's coming from within you, from out of you, that scent that's originating from inside you, that is more beloved to me than the scent of musk. Allah is saying this. So see how Allah is engaging with us in our inner selves, and for us to engage internally with Allah and make that connection. And that is really the essence of fasting of Ramadan and this whole program which we've been discussing. So inshallah, I end with this. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. If I know them, I'll answer them. If I don't know them, then you can just email me, inshallah. And tomorrow we'll be discussing about Taraweeh more. We'll be discussing about Laylatul Qadr, I believe, and something about Eid and Sadaqatul Fitr, and just touching upon or just concluding on what we've been discussing today, inshallah.